And we are live. Alright, so we just finished 2005,
Yep.
and because I know for a fact we will not have this finished by the end of this month, I have gone through and added every year up to and including 2021.
Yeah.
So,
I'm already thinking about the brain versus brain or whatever. I got to
yeah,
get my score ready for that.
but do you have
Definitely.
your score ready for DC Superhero Girls Team Power?
Uh, I mean, I don't have it ready. I
You,
may
well,
never have it
you
ready.
have a few
Really.
weeks.
Yes.
But for now, let's go back to the era where every European game had to have a different name for some reason.
Yep. Yep. It's
And
accuracy. I think you'll find is the
yes,
reason.
and let's start with Mario Party 7, the second one with a microphone. It also came with a microphone, so if you got six, you had two microphones. Was there anything you could do with two microphones? No.
The stereo. I, yeah, no real kind of. Don't even really particularly remember how this was received back in the day. So, ooh.
Not well.
Yeah, I think probably a five again, maybe. I feel like is where we settled at with
Um, let me check. Um, in 2000, or you gave it a four for the last years.
Yeah, so I think maybe we should stick with the four then. Yeah, it was either four or five that we kind of settled at.
Okay.
I think maybe when we get to Wii, it could go up a bit after this gradual
I don't
decline.
know. Mario Party 8 is the one where there is an entire mini game where you simulate masturbation.
Yeah, it's people like though. Again, I didn't play either of them, but did people like nine a bit better, or was
No,
that?
9 was the car one.
Oh God! Oh well.
No, we are in the people don't, even Mario Party fans don't like Mario Party. What's going on
Wow.
thing.
Well, it's problems for another day, I guess. That's all we can
Yes.
say about that. I really know so
Um,
little about Mario Party games.
alright. But speaking of the microphone, Odama.
Yeah, Odama. I've been intrigued by this over the years because I do like pinball. We've talked about that before. I would have been more intrigued if it had followed through on using
Yes.
the bongos to actually kind of
Yeah.
play. It would have been kind of interesting that, but yeah, but it doesn't really. Again, the whole speech recognition doesn't really work that well from what I understand of what people have said about it.
Mm.
So yeah, it's kind of amusing concept and intriguing to me personally, but I can't say too much about it. So it's probably like maybe a five and a half or something. But
Which way you went around?
let's go with a five.
Okay. Alright, we are in the last five GameCube games of Nintendo of Europe, so let's move to Chibi Robo.
Yeah, kind of surprising that that did actually come out here, to
Oh,
be
yeah.
honest, considering GameCube was like probably more dead in Europe than even elsewhere in the Western world. But yeah, I did not play the GameCube version, but I did play the new Play Control Wii version in
Imported,
Japanese.
yes.
Yeah,
It's not like that's a game that needs text or anything. Oh,
no,
wait.
exactly. But luckily, because there's so much, because it exists in English at least, I was pretty much able to just follow along using a guide and essentially just the script of the game. So it was a bit disjointed, but I didn't really lose
Hey, at
much.
least you were able to play it in 16 by 9.
But even then, like GameCube copies of Chibi Robo were quite hard to get a hold of.
Oh, yeah, no, they barely made any.
Yeah, so that's kind of what went into it. I kind of wish I'd got it because it did review quite well and stuff. And of course, the new Play Control version is you got widescreen, which is kind of nice, more immersive with the whole you are a tiny character,
Yes.
and a normal living space is this big huge world kind of thing. And there's some nice enough pointer control stuff or whatever, but yeah, the game itself is pretty solid and charming in its presentation and all that. So it's definitely got some Majora's Mask kind of feelings to it in terms of it based around kind of fixing people's problems and all these sort of odd characters, most of whom are the toys that are all that are alive in the household and stuff. I think an 8 for Chibi Robo. I rather like it.
Okay. Um, The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess, the GameCube version. So,
Yeah,
a quick
yeah,
note is that for Breath of the Wild, because there are no tangible differences between Wii U and Switch, that will be one joint rating. Because there are actual tangible differences,
oh yeah,
very
that's
tangible
true.
between GameCube and Wii, they are separate in case they are separate scores.
Yeah, like they really went out of their way with the Wii U version of Breath of the Wild to make it so there wasn't a difference. Because it's basically the gamepad just like inert. Like
Yes, in preview, the gamepad did things, but in the final version, they cut all gamepad functionality. They cut Miiverse functionality. Basically, anything that would make the last gen version is superior to the current gen version.
yeah. So had they sort of not done that, then you would have had maybe 2 scores for that as well. But yeah, so I think it makes sense. I have played both versions of Twilight Princess.
All three versions?
Well, actually, all three, yeah, but both versions that came out in this particular year of
Yes.
'06. If I played Wii first, then GameCube.
That's a good
Actually,
perspective.
yeah. So it was because I was really didn't know what to do. I ended up kind of. I didn't quite get a Wii at launch, and then you couldn't get one for a while because they
Sure
were
couldn't.
blowing up, and yeah. So I was like, should I get it? Should I get the GameCube now? And it's like, well, I'd kind of like to play the Wii version first, and then maybe I'll come back around to GameCube. And that's eventually what happened. So I don't think I'm going to give different scores, even though there are significant differences. I think they kind of balance out at least enough to have the same score. For the GameCube, you've got everything is the correct way round. They
Mm-hmm.
haven't flipped it to conform to right-handed supremacy or whatever. So yeah, there was no need for that. Yeah, the biggest bonus or upside is obviously being able to just button press for sword combat as opposed to the kind of gesture stuff. The pointer stuff is great for shooting, and the gesture stuff for sword play is not good. So yeah, it
Yes.
kind of those two things for me kind of balance it. It's I d- it's not quite a 9 for it'd probably be an 8.5, but it's in this system it's going to have to be an 8, which it's kind of in some ways, given that it is so much more of a more game than like Chibi Robo immediately before it might look
Yes.
funny, but that is where it is in terms of there's a lot of things I like about it, great dungeons and all that kind of stuff, but it is probably a little bit too
Long.
slavishly kind of adherent to Ocarina of
Oh,
Time
I thought you
to
were just gonna
get.
call it too long, and I was gonna agree.
No, I think that's fair. Also, I think there's a kind of some of that overcorrection on Wind Waker, isn't there? It's like okay, because
Yes.
again, I gave Wind Waker an 8. Again, Wind Waker, I think is kind of more of an 8.5. Close to a 9, but not quite a 9.
Yes.
But in that case, it's like, oh well, it is shorter. It is kind of it's got some flaws that just needed a bit more time to iron out. Twilight Princess, that's not the case, but it is kind of overall, and it's too faithful to
Oh yeah.
the first three. So it all sort of balances out to being an 8 as well, even though it kind of gets there in a different way. But there's far too much about it. I do very much like to go any lower.
Okay. All right. For the last GameCube game, Naruto: Clash of Ninja 2, and I want to be clear. This is not the game that Ty Sugar gave a 10 out of 10 to on NWR and called the best multiplayer game on GameCube. That would be Naruto 4, which I don't think ever got localized.
Okay, right. It was an import thing. So yeah.
Yes.
So this is and again, like in terms of NOE's angle on it, is this something that was done by NOA or as
Nope.
well, or
No, NOE brought this one over because Naruto was getting its English dub was getting popular. I assume in Europe as well, if they're Nintendo of Europe is bringing it out. But these games come over by Bandai Namco. These are CyberConnect 2 games. They are CyberConnect 2 for 80% of their games. They make the same game over and over, but with different popular anime licenses.
Right. Yeah.
And then the other 20% is Dot Hack.
Right. So it's surprisingly activist, to be honest, for 2006. In your and Chibi Robo as well. I'm a little bit surprised that there was even this much. I guess
I
it
mean, there's
was.
also only 3 Wii games.
Yeah, because the Wii doesn't get here until the end of the year.
Yeah, this is
It's very barren on the console front,
yes.
but
So
then they were very busy on the portable.
yes, so the 5 console games they put out before November, one of them is November, which is Twilight Princess, but the 4 they put out before November are Naruto, Chibi Robo, and 2 microphone games.
Yeah, so I mean that is it's
That is in fact barren.
it's yeah, that's really gonna get juice the
Yeah,
market
I
for
love
the game.
stretching 10 months of the year if you're a GameCube owner, but and maybe even if you also own a GBA but you don't own a DS yet. Like there's also only 4 GBA games. So like
Yeah.
if you have not yet adopted in 2006 to the DS, you are fucked as a Nintendo fan. There is
Yeah.
nothing for you.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't until like the middle of '05, but yeah, I think if I'd held that much longer, it would have been pretty miserable, wouldn't it? I don't know why I would have done, but
Yes.
so for Naruto, I don't know much about this.
Let me check Metacritic. Because I cannot keep the Naruto games straight, except for the one that Ty gave a 10 out of 10 to.
As well, I mean, that'll get your attention, I guess.
Yes, this this has a 74 Metacritic,
Right.
which is honestly more than I expected. Oh, it was published by D3. Excuse me. Just a different label. What did Nintendo World Report gave it an 8? It was a Japan import. Who gave it that? Unfortunately, the Metacritic is linking to the wrong page, probably because of Planet GameCube. So, Naruto Clash of Ninja 2 says was an import review. I'm gonna guess Ty? Mike Gammon. Oh, it has 2 reviews. No, Zosha gave it an import review in 2004 at an 8, and then in 2006 in October 2006, Mike Gaiman gave it a 7.5, and the subhead was a good fall release for the GameCube. Believe it. This is, as Mike notes, this review came out after the 3rd game and 4th game got reviews on the same website.
Yeah.
Um,
It's. I mean, I guess a 7 sounds probably like the right pick here. I mean, I don't want to go any higher than that without
yes.
knowing more about
No,
it. But seems like it's reasonable enough based on.
Yes. The pros are the gameplay is solid. It feels like the anime series, and the character animations are great. And the cons are there aren't very many voice recordings, so they are endlessly reused. The controls in multiplayer can get confusing, and I'm usually using the wrong combo by mistake. Those are the cons. Is the controls are bad. There's not enough audio, but everything else seemed good. All right. Well, speaking of the reasons that maybe it was hard to get a console in 2006, let's talk about Wii Sports, a game that still holds up.
Yeah, I think I got to play Wii Sports before I actually did get my Wii. It was probably December or something. A friend of mine had already secured a Wii, and so yeah, I played it then, and quite enjoyed it. Obviously, it's there's sort of some limitations to how nuanced it can get, and that's really kind of some of the impetus for Wii Sports Resort and the Motion Plus, and
Of
all that
course.
years later. But it's still, for the most part, it did work quite well. Especially like bowling was my favourite of the bunch. I mean, I think the golf was a bit more kind of like, this is it's almost there, but it's not quite there. Baseball was a bit like, this doesn't quite, but it's tough to rate this because it's I think it still is a fun game, and yet a good use of what the motion control could do at the time. But then it has this like historic importance that it it achieved something really incredible and put their
The
you know
best
concept.
fight, the best fight that NOA ever won to put it in the box.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, that was huge, and then it just ends up completely revitalizing their console business
Hmm.
for a time, anyway, before it
For
really
about
revitalized
4 years.
again. But yeah, I think it's all in all, it's going to end up being a 7. But there's definitely an argument for it to be higher. But I think in the end, it just some of the limitations and the fact that obviously it's not that
Hmm.
deep. But it's a tremendously important game. It's just kind of difficult to. All those sorts of things are kind of incommensurable, aren't they?
Yes. All right, and I believe this next game debuted in Europe before anywhere else in the world.
Wow, yeah.
We play.
Yeah, so but famous for just being a disc with an extra remote. So
Yep.
it's kind of like, okay, people who want an extra remote, I can have a game as well, and then it just sort of gave you more
A $10
mini.
game with a $40 remote.
Yeah, exactly, and of course because the multiplayer was such a focus with Wii Sports being packed in and all that, it was so natural to want an extra controller. I never owned it. I did play again. Other people had it,
Well,
so
then you basically owned it.
yeah, exactly.
You've played the whole
These are
thing.
like really shallow, aren't they?
Oh, yeah.
This is the real. So again, it's kind of it did what it was meant to do, big time. Like you can't really argue with the sort of mission accomplished of it, but it's definitely not as good a game as Wii
Oh,
Sports,
no. Uh,
nowhere near. So I think a 5 for this.
yeah. The sequel that no one played is much, much better.
Is that We Play Motion?
Yes.
Yeah,
And we'll
yeah.
get there.
I didn't play that, but I do recall. I guess just using the Motion Plus is one thing, but there must have just been more to it because this was
Oh,
yeah,
there was
it was
more
just
to it because they got like 6 different developers to make the 10 different games, including like Indie Zero, Good Feel.
yeah. It's basically like the same sort of thing they would do for the Street Pass games
Exactly.
later
It was the
on.
prototype of
Yeah,
that, of going to all these different studios and saying, like, Vanpool or whatever, and just being like, look, we don't want to stretch your staff thin on 10 different games. We want you to put a bunch of your staff on one minigame.
yeah, yeah. So I'm sure it's I mean, it's some of that launch syndrome with
Oh, yeah.
replay. It's just like just get it there and it show off. Oh, you could shoot a gallery or the laser hockey thing or
Yes. What are
whatever. It's
things that can be done that are not
yeah,
sports? And
and so
I.
that weird fishing game. I think that's probably
Oh,
my most
yes.
vivid memory of that.
And like again, like if you look at the if you put Wii discs, this is the funniest thing to me. If you put a Wii disc in a DVD drive on a computer, even if it was not the type that was allowed, like that could read or write the disc files, the disc would still show up under the name of the internal code name for that project.
Right.
So for Wii Sports, you put it in your computer, it was like a sports pack for Revolution, and Wii Play is mini game pack for Revolution. Like it is literally just like, what's the fucking code name for this? I don't know, mini game pack.
That's not a code name.
What is it?
Just does what it says on the tin.
Exactly. I mean, like I think that's where like literally if you put in Super Mario Galaxy 2, I forget if it's like literally says 1.5 or it
Yeah.
says like Super Mario Galaxy expansion or something like that, but it is literally like what is the root of their project files on their computer for this game called?
Yeah,
And
well, why would you put that in your DVD drive when you could put the educational video that teaches you how 3D
oh,
platforms
that's true.
for Super Mario Galaxy 2?
That's true. What happens when you put the wrong disc in? Whoops, I'm a kid. I don't know how to jump. Um, all right, the sequel to 2005's DS game Polarium Advance for the GBA.
Yeah, so
Third pillar.
we covered that this is more advanced than the other
Yes.
Polarium,
Yes.
right? So
There's way more
what-
content.
Yeah, so where did we land on the previous Polarium?
You landed on a 6
Yeah, so I think probably a 7 is where we
Okay.
go with this.
I think that honestly, that and this next game, Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Red Rescue Team, are like the only two examples they ever truly had to show of third pillar.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
There were some kind of third pillar irons in the fire, but they
yes,
could also
of
be taken out very quickly.
yes, of things going back and forth between hardware. Of like, no, this is a GBA sequel to a DS game. Of course it is. It's an equally valid platform. What are you talking about? Keep in mind that this is the year that they just took the GBA out back and just shot it. Was
in Japan,
2006.
in Japan, we're getting Mother 3, Rhythm Tengoku,
Yep.
Bit Generation stuff. Like quite a lot is still happening, even though DS was burning hotter there than like anywhere on the planet. It wasn't
Yes.
as if
No, this is where if your game was not Pokemon and had a large script, it was not getting localized for GPA. That was it.
yeah, yeah. So
Um,
there's and it just even like those cool little things that were happening like with the bit generations and stuff. Which again,
yeah,
it's a bit like the putting the NES game or Famicom
that's
games
the
on
thing.
cards. It is awkward. I mean, they weren't full price, I don't think.
No, they were like 2,000 yen. They were like $20, but even still, like that
And
is
they had cute little packaging. I had a few,
yeah,
2 or 3, I forget exactly. Definitely DigiDrive and Orbital.
yeah,
Sorry, not yeah, DigiDrive, Orbital. I think I had Sound Voyager and the Dot Stream as well. Yeah, I had
yes.
4 of them. Yeah, that's right. But they had these cute little packaging. I mean, GBA packaging was kind of small, leaner already, but then these were even trimmed down a bit more and this
Yes.
sort of white background and yeah, it's there was cool stuff
But
happening.
it makes sense why those would never come out. Well, they
Oh yeah,
those
oh
versions of those games never came over.
yeah, a lot of them did come back
Yes.
eventually.
Not
I'm not
Sound
sure.
Voyager.
No, that is a weird one. It's kind of a tough
Yes.
sell.
Sure is. Alright. Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Red Rescue Team. So, just to give you quick reference, this comes out the same day as Blue Rescue Team for the DS. Um, so that it is all. This is the most alternate versions because the alternate versions are literally on different hardware.
Yeah, that's true.
And I mean it's the same story. These are the first Pokemon roguelike Mystery Dungeon games, and a lot of what they have is by being the first ones and being a more accessible version of the hardcore like Sheer and the Wanderer formula.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, I've never played a game, kind of as patterned on Sheeran as these are. I mean, these sorts of elements have become a lot more popular in various kinds of game design these days. But I guess Pokemon Mystery Dungeon was quite a bit ahead of
Yeah.
that.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of like taking it mainstream in a different way. But yeah, so I really don't know how much I'd like it or not.
Did you play the demo for the Switch remake of this?
I think I had a look at it, yeah, briefly. Because the graphics and all that, it's quite cute, but I
Yeah.
didn't get enough of a sense of
Okay.
how much I would enjoy the gameplay.
Yeah, the
Uh,
dungeon crawling is 95% of the experience. So,
yeah, yeah. So the most I've kind of done dungeon crawling is Persona Q2, with the
right.
Etrian style of it. So it's
And
a little bit different. I didn't play Etrian Mystery Dungeon, which of course it also as another Etrian.
that would be a really funny follow up to Q2 of just like I'm going to make my way to Mystery Dungeon what like through like the Kevin Bacon association metric
Yeah,
of like
I'm circling it.
yes, all right. I'm not what's my first persona going to be? Q2, which is Persona X Etrian. What's my next Etrian game going to be? Etrian Mystery Dungeon, which is Etrian X Mystery Dungeon. What's my next Mystery Dungeon? Pokemon Mystery Dungeon, which is Pokemon X Mystery Dungeon.
I'm circling. I mean, the question is there a route into the center of that circle? And the
Uh,
answer is yes.
is there a Pokemon Persona to close the whole thing? I don't know.
I don't know, that could work. That
I
definitely.
mean, well, one of the series is rated M, so
Mm,
and the other
yeah,
doesn't want to be in the M-rated brand. But yes.
but is having Pokemon as your persona or whatever.
Oh, I got it. I got it.
That's pretty
Pokemon Conquest, which is Pokemon X Nobunaga's Ambition,
efficient. Yeah.
and then there's a Nobunaga's Ambition X Dynasty Warriors, and then Persona 5 Strikers. Solved. Completed the whole
I like
circle.
it. And then you could get to P5 on something, presumably.
Maybe.
I think I'm gonna go with a 6 on this. It's tough.
Okay.
It's something I'm not. It's the non-committal 6, but
Is that going to be the same non-committal 6 for Blue Mystery Dungeon?
I think so. Yeah, I've never been under the impression. Even as you said, it's more distinct than like when you get to Explorers of Time and Darkness or whatever.
Oh,
when they
yes.
worked on DS, but I think
The-
they are.
The difference is that the second screen on one is used for a map and the other has a mini map on screen.
Yeah, it's. I mean, it's probably worth something, but I don't think it's worth the whole point.
I would agree. All right. Speaking of the GBA is dead, long live the GBA. Final Fantasy IV Advance.
Yeah. So again, this is because I mean, I guess were they doing this in America as well?
Yeah, but earlier.
Yeah, but yeah, because it took
Yes.
a while. Yeah.
So
They get to I mean, like 6 was 2007 in America,
Mhm.
wasn't it? Yeah. So that.
Oh, we'll get there.
Yeah, we'll get, but I mean, so this would have the original Final Fantasy 2 as a version of that game is kind of a bit sort of spotty, isn't it? In
It's-
terms of like
It's a little compromised.
it's easier and like
Yeah,
some
significantly.
translation stuff is kind of funky and all that. And I guess this fixes most of that, doesn't it?
Most of it, yes. I mean, it's lower resolution, but like, yes, it is by and large a considerable improvement.
Yeah, I don't know how the audio kind of compares.
A little less good, which
Yeah,
of course
I
you're
thought
gonna get.
Yeah, again, we talked about the GBA's limitations in this regard vis-a-vis Super Nintendo, but I think an 8 seems appropriate for this.
Okay, so yeah, no, they're NOE's GBA lineup for this hot year as they are wrapping up their third pillar argument is a sequel to a DS game, a Pokemon spin-off that's also on DS, and 2 games that aren't theirs.
Yeah.
Amazing lineup, y'all. And then finally, yeah, Tales of Fantasia with a PH.
Well, yes, indeed. We already talked about my complete lack of knowledge of Tales games, so we're back here again. And you're not a fan.
So here's what I will say. I really do appreciate this. I just looked it up on Metacritic. Metacritic, it is 76, which is a little low by Tales standards because, like I've always said, by the time you get to 2006, a JRPG review is, oh my gosh, I remember JRPGs, why don't I play these that much? And that's every JRPG review from then until, I don't know, 2030. That's still every review.
We're still waiting.
Go read Xenoblade Chronicles 2 reviews. They are all just, wow, it's an RPG. I forgot I loved those. Go read Octopath Traveler reviews. Go read Persona 5 reviews. They're all the fucking same thing. It's annoying as a fan of the genre. That's not what I'm looking for. I know it's an RPG. But then there's also an iOS version of Tales of Fantasia, and that is a 35.
Oh, wow. I mean, obviously, iOS is kind of infamous for having some pretty bad versions of these sorts of games, but oof.
I will say that the most positive review on Metacritic says the storyline is excellent and the voice acting spot on, but Tales of Fantasia is unbelievably let down by its free-to-play model and terrible controls. 4. That's the most positive.
Yeah, well, it sounds like that's pretty much inarguable that that version is just and a lot of them aren't they?
Yeah, well, there used to be the mobile versions of the current Final Fantasy Pixel remasters are very good.
Yeah, I've heard some good things, and I guess it's not before time to take it a bit more seriously. That's for sure.
Yeah, no, it's also my understanding is they were surprised by the positive reception to 1, 2, and 3 and got very excited So maybe you'll see more of that. I don't know. I don't actually know where that will lead, but I do know that they were originally being like, "Oh shit, people actually are liking this. We did something good with our old IP. Hell yeah."
Well, it's tough. It's tough for me to say with this. I think I'm gonna go with the six. Could be a little harsh again. It's one of those non-committal sixes because I don't know much about it. But yeah,
Yeah,
I don't really feel comfortable going higher than that without having a bit more to go on. Sadly.
that's valid. On to the DS. 60% of the year.
Here we go. Yeah, this into the storm.
Yes, Mario and Luigi, Partners in Time. Surprisingly, not called Partners in Time Brothers yet.
I even thought of that. I definitely imported this and played it. A, it was cheaper. B, I played it in '05. I'm pretty sure.
Yes,
Yeah, because it was end of
probably.
the year.
Yep.
I think so. Yeah, it would make setup famously wordy. These games and
Mm-hmm.
all the other languages that were required for a European release. But
Well,
I'm
then
so
some of them came
surprised.
out first in Europe on the 3DS, and it makes no sense.
That's true, yeah, but certainly a great deal had changed by then, and they
Yes.
probably had more advanced, the lead-in time to actually make things like that possible with access to the script. I'm assuming, they're just in these sorts of days. We weren't there at that point, but yeah, I mean, we already covered the first Mario and Luigi. I really, really like that. With this, it's
Mm.
tough because it's mostly got a lot of the same qualities that I still really like, but coming quite shortly thereafter and not building on them in ways that were terribly impactful. Obviously, we got your two screens and you got your two sets of Mario and Luigi with the babies and two sets of a lot of the characters with their other equivalents, the sort of two time periods and stuff, and even more complex kind of special attacks because you've got more face buttons and on the DS and all this kind of stuff. It didn't really, it kind of made it convoluted, more convoluted, but not altogether better.
Yeah.
Some aspects like the resolution giving a bit more of a visible play area to work with and the music quality and stuff, like there was upsides to it vis-a-vis its predecessor, but I'd say overall a 7. Still, there's very many fundamentally solid and admirable qualities, but it didn't come in so soon after. It lacked impact and lacked tangible progression.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Animal Crossing Wild World.
Yeah, so this was definitely something I strongly considered getting, but never actually did. It's just kind of a shame, probably. I think I really would have liked it based on, my experience with Animal Crossing later. But obviously, with it's kind of the way it's described, and how much of sort of like reviews and coverage at the time sort of trying to explain the appeal of it. It's not the easiest sort of thing to think I'll definitely get that. But yeah, I mean, from everything I've ever sort of gathered, it was a very solid kind of entry
Mm-hmm.
in the series that was capitalizing on the fact that this was a kind of more natural home for it on DS for this kind of gameplay, and just a much more popular system than it had ever been on before, N64 and GameCube, that allowed it to just completely explode and go. Obviously, series has grown a great deal since, even on like lesser selling system. Like, didn't the 3DS game outsell this one, even though
Yes.
obviously the 3DS game, the 3DS as a system was not nearly as popular. So it shows the growth of
Oh,
Animal Crossing
yes.
as is something that's kind of a phenomenon unto itself that goes beyond just the sort of ebb and flows of Nintendo's sort of platform popularity. But I think an 8 for this is appropriate. It might be, if I'd had it at the time, I might be looking back on it and giving it a 9. But
The online was really, really impactful for the time. Like
yeah,
this is the first, like this and Mario Kart, were like the true, like because these came out before Pokemon. these were, even in Japan, these were like the big online Nintendo Wi-Fi connection is here to stay games.
Yeah, definitely. You hear just I think it had that kind of emergent thing of just the stories that people had of well I left the I left it open for people to visit and weird stuff happened and all that. It just kind of it really allowed that whole kind of concept of the communication game to actually take flight
Oh
in a way
yes.
that it never would have been able to before that.
Um, Speaking of games that helped online cement itself, Tetris DS.
Yeah, I never did get this, and of course, with the license expires and all that, there's no reprint, and it became expensive online, and it's before you could get it digitally or anything like that. The pre-eShop era, so missed out on it. It kind of seemed like it had some cute like Nintendo themed like variants and kind of aesthetics and stuff. And Tetris is fundamentally very solid and enjoyable, especially on portable hardware. So I'll go with an 8 with the caveat that sadly I didn't get
Okay.
the chance to actually experience it myself.
Pokemon Link. Do you know what this game is?
Is this the match?
This is Troze, yes.
This is Troza, yeah. So yeah, see that muddied the waters even more when I was
Yep.
because it's not called I knew it as Troza again because I'm mostly reading coverage on the internet. That's not, but yeah,
Yep.
yeah. So this is. I don't think it's Pokemon Dash bad, but it's not good, is it?
Oh, it's not. It's fine. It's a match 3 game.
Yeah,
It's
I
cute.
think.
The graphics are cute. They end up using um, a chibi art style for all the Pokemon, the first 3 generations of Pokemon, that, of course, ends up getting recycled in the future for projects like Pokemon Shuffle, that is largely based on this, and other merchandise. But it's cute. It's not that much.
I think 5 is going to be suitable for this.
Okay. Metroid Prime Hunters, the full game.
Yeah, so I never played the demo because I didn't have the 3DS. 3DS. I didn't have the DS early enough because it came with like those early Mario
Yes.
packs. Whereas I was getting one in the summer of '05. That was it was gone by then. But I did play the full game. Obviously, with a certain level of intrigue, being that it was kind of Metroid branded product, and also a certain level of intrigue of like how well is a shooter going to work with this kind of interface.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, I played it. I enjoyed it somewhat, and it played some multiplayer as well. But obviously, it's kind of it's a bit of an awkward fit with Metroid stuff because it's not really that much like a Metroid Prime game, and some of it's kind of. I mean, I guess the most meaningful kind of thing that made it feel like a non-trivial association with Metroid is that not only Samus but like all the other hunters like had like
Yep.
multiple modes essentially. They all had this that they could transform into, and they're all different. And so that was kind of really well implemented. But beyond that, so much of like the boss fight repetition and like just like again, so like there was always an escape sequence like every so often, which just felt like that's not how escape sequences in Metroid are. Like clearly you wouldn't have an escape sequence in here if this wasn't Metroid themed, and yet
Yep.
like at most you get two in a Metroid game, like at the beginning and the end. In the case of Super Metroid, you don't get them regular. Why is it regular here? I think overall, and I got on better with the touchscreen, kind of
Mm-hmm.
sort of a bit like mouse and keyboard style controls. I think than a lot of people, but it doesn't change that the game itself is a bit thin. So I think a 6.
Okay. Did you play any of the online multiplayer?
I did a bit, yeah, a little bit, not that much, but I
Okay.
think it worked. There was a sort of part of that was kind of a novelty factor, but I don't know whether it was really something I would have gone back to. And
That's
of course,
fair.
given the controls don't lend themselves to prolonged play in either whether you played single player or multiplayer. Like I think they are effective, but they're not the kind of thing you want to do for hours on end.
Okay. Um, Super Princess Peach. which
Did get around to this, no.
I do want to flag that the Super Princess Peach reviews are all like, wow, it might be hashtag problematic, but at least there's a classic 2D Mario franchise platformer coming out of Nintendo. It's been so long since one of those. It's been like an original one. It's been since the Super Nintendo. This is really refreshing. I'm so excited. I'm gonna like that. That is most of the reason I'm giving this a high score. New Super Mario Brothers came out 5 weeks later.
Yeah.
5 weeks.
That is some of the reason why I didn't go back to it later. I think because it's just like, well, you did start to get those games, and I think probably some of the reason why I didn't get it, even before was the fact that that was on the horizon. It's kind of like, well, the real deal, it will be with us at some point. But yeah, I mean, the reviews at the time weren't. I think you're right. Of course, like there was plenty of just like what you were talking about with the Tales stuff. Like, there's like people. Oh, I remember this kind of game, and this reminds me of that, and it's pretty functionally kind of sound. So, thumbs up. But
Yes.
it didn't convince all the way that it was kind of worth getting. And I thought I'd wait to New Super Mario Brothers, and I didn't go back to it. Even it's I think it's more attractive than New Super Mario Brothers, that's for sure. I mean, you because it does use the polygonal kind of elements or the sort of pre-rendered elements, or that New Super Mario Brothers does. So I think it stands up, especially in retrospect.
Mm-hmm.
It's aesthetically nicer, but yeah, just didn't. It didn't persuade, and so it notably absent from the Wii U
Yeah.
virtual console.
Maybe don't want to bring that attention back to that one.
Yeah, it's yeah. I mean, everything I read about it is so the whole idea is that
Oh my gosh.
it's called Vibe Island for a
Yes.
start, right? And
Great choice. That doesn't mean anything else.
it's and like so everything is emotional on this island,
Especially her.
but also Princess Peach is emotional, and it's like, yeah, you could kind of get out of it, but say, oh no, it's not like just that she's emotional; everybody's emotional.
Yeah, but it's still
why
her
is
first. It's the first time that she's the protagonist.
why is it that it just happens to be, that this first time that a female Mario character has gone on an adventure is to this emotional place?
Yeah, it's here's the PMS game.
It's yeah, so I mean that I think has probably doomed it to permanent obscurity. But yeah, everything I was read, it's a perfectly passable sort of platformer by Tosei, I believe,
Yep.
with nice enough art, and I think it was gonna have the Koopa Kids in at one point, but they hadn't been like cleared to come back yet, so they didn't. Maybe
I think it did.
I forget. There's definitely one game where people discovered after the fact that the Koopa Kids are like in the game data, but they're not in the game. And it might have been this one. It might have been something else. But of course, once we get to New Super Mario Brothers Wii and Mario Kart Wii,
Yes, that is all unused. It is unused. All of the Koopalings
yes.
are in.
So yeah, they at that point they hadn't warmed back up to them yet, but a few years later they were everywhere again. But yeah, I think it's probably. I think I'll go with the 6, maybe more of a 5.5, but a 6.
Okay.
So.
Real quick, update from the Game Awards. A new Telltale game got announced.
Okay, it's the zombie company. Is it
Yeah.
a zombie game from the zombie company?
Yeah, they're putting out The Expanse, a game based on The Expanse.
Okay.
I don't know. That seems like a call to make. Anyways, all right, we're getting into the long names. Dr. Kawashima's brain training. How old is your brain?
Yeah, so this was brain age in
Yes.
America. But yeah, but we went with the long form kind of more literal translation. Yeah, obviously this was a big game in terms of building that big tent with the DS, a whole other demographic or a whole other kind of in or hook with people of like, oh, it's like productivity software, it helps and all of it. So yeah, I didn't have it. It didn't really seem like it was for me. uh, but it certainly got the job done, didn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know how much of it was just like total flim flam, but maybe a 7 just for
Okay.
its undeniable significance for
It
the
had Dr.
console.
Mario in it.
Oh, did it?
Yeah, it was called Virus Buster. It's what
Oh, that's
Online
right.
RX stole
That's
from.
right. I remember. Yeah, because when I played the online version, yeah, with the for Wii,
Yes.
he was born from that. Would have been with the stylus instead of the pointer. Yeah.
Um. All right, Nintendogs Dalmatian and Friends, which is a separate release from the other three games that comes with different dog breeds. A year
Yeah.
later.
So we have an 8 for this before, I
Uh,
believe. The
we
few of the.
have a 7 for this before.
Okay, well, I think it was probably somewhere between, probably 7. I think it probably is the right score, but I could imagine thinking 7.5 on it as
Yeah.
well. So.
Okay. New Super Mario Brothers. What?
Yeah, it was a long time in coming. I was definitely looking forward to it a lot, and I liked it, but I didn't love it. Basically, it just kind of seemed like it was a little bit too. I felt, and I'm legitimate. This was what I just kind of felt like it was with the name and the kind of level design and the power ups and everything. It just felt like it was appealing to people who had played Super Mario Brothers and not the other games, or they wouldn't remember the
Yep.
other game. It'd be just like it's like
Mm-hmm.
Super Mario Brothers 3 only came out a few years later. Like I'm sure a lot of the same people played that too,
Nope.
and
No
it's
one has
kind of
ever played that game.
it's kind of richer and but it's like it felt like they just
Mm-hmm.
made a decision to kind of hem themselves in a little bit and just play within this particular kind of original Super Mario Brothers playground. And I felt it was kind of to the detriment of the game being more interested. Obviously there was an element of all these years later, just like, oh, it's a new one of those, and brought some things to the table, with the star coins and all. It's just kind of building off, things like the trackable dragon coins
Yep.
in Super Mario Advance 2, the Super Mario World version. So it did, but it's not like it brought nothing to the table. It's aesthetically, even at the time, wasn't a great looker. I personally like the new Super Mario Brothers theme song, but it does get overused in the
Uh-huh.
games, especially over time. All in all, I think a 7.
Okay.
A good start, but they had plenty of room to improve, and eventually they did.
Okay. Electroplankton.
I Yeah, I mean you hear about this, but I really, didn't particularly know what to make of it, and but my primary familiarity with it is from the stage in Smash Brothers.
Oh, you are
Yeah.
okay. You are either going to have to do homework when we get to this on DSiWare, or
Yes.
that's going to take a very long time to get through as you
They
look up
they
every single one.
so they basically the DSi servers, they just take like various components of this game and split them up into
So
separate.
Electroplankton is, I believe, 8 or 10 different experiences. Each allows a different method of playing with music.
Yeah.
Some of them involve uh, modulating recordings taken with the DS microphone. Some involve just like basically setting up loops of different beats to play over each other as you slowly compose a song. Um, but they're all isolated experiences, and so for DSi, where every single one got sold individually.
Yeah. I guess it's kind of an experiment in terms of like
Maybe, but that's gonna throw down that average of 2009,
yeah, well, I'm sure
like all of
so.
the other DSiWare shit.
It's tough to score something like this. I probably, even if I had played it, to be honest, 'cause it's trading off kind of novelty, and it's more of an audio visual experience type of deal than it is,
All right.
your
hmm
typical kind of game. So
Here's an alternate way to think about this. Um, how did the E3 presentation make you when they just had someone DJ on it for 5 minutes? How did that make you feel?
it's an interesting question. I know back in the day, Carl Castaneda, who hosted RFM for a time, just basically, I think, like, just didn't do a score for the game or whatever. It was just kind of like, I can't score this kind of
Yeah.
thing. So, yeah, that doesn't fill me with confidence considering he played it and I haven't. So I think,
Unfortunately, the spreadsheet will count no score as a zero.
yeah, which we don't want to do that. I mean, it does, in some ways, it kind of seems like those sort of musical, audiovisual type of experience, something I could be quite amenable to that sort of thing under the right circumstances. I'll give it a 5. I think. I do seem to remember that people felt like it was overpriced. As a retail release, which that may have been another reason why they did that split up job on DSi, where it's just like, okay, well, now you don't have to buy the whole thing to kind of see if you like this kind of thing, maybe. Yeah, perhaps that was the logic, but I think we'll go with 5.
Okay. Big Brain Academy, the other brain training series that didn't get its name changed for Europe.
Yeah, this was more kind of like actual video game type stuff.
Yes.
I never owned this, but somebody else did. I think you kind of saw some of the kind of games, and of course it just came back as well with the brain
Yes.
versus brain, and it's actual like mini game type stuff, but based on the kinds of things that you might have for kind of puzzles or questions
And
in order to answer.
crucially, it's not making any promises about your health.
Yeah, exactly. It just felt
This
more.
was their backup plan.
It was way less consequential than sort of Brain Age, but
The
it
Wii
definitely.
version did well.
But it was. Always felt to me like it was more of a sort of honest, like straight up video game, and a sort of square deal rather than the sort of flim flam of it's going to make your brain younger or
Yes.
whatever. So, yeah, I think it was sort of reasonably well thought of on those grounds. I think perhaps I'll give this a 7 as well,
Okay.
even though like it's probably better as a game, but not as impactful commercially.
Alright, what about 42 all time classics?
Yeah, another one that's come back. Was it last year?
That was last year, yes.
The the time dilation of pandemic years has tested me, but yeah, I remember again. Somebody else had this at some point. I didn't have it. The Clubhouse games, as it's called in America, so it's another one of those. It seemed like it was sort of fun enough kind of stuff, but not anything earth shattering. Maybe a 6.
Okay. English training, have fun improving your skills.
I mean, I didn't even remember this existed. I have to say, English training. So,
Yes.
um, was this focused on presumably the non-English speaking
I don't fucking
parts?
know you can play the whole game in English and it came out in the UK.
I really don't know what to say about this. I think we'll just go with a 5. It's
Okay.
not face training. I mean, let's
We'll
just
get
say that.
there. Alright, we already did that. Yoshi's Island DS.
Yeah, another one I was looking forward to, obviously, given the Yoshi's Island, hadn't really sort of got a straight follow up. I mean, I played Yoshi Story by this point because I got a cartridge for dirt cheap, a Japanese copy with a nicer box art. and played it, but it was pretty much what I thought it would be. But yeah, so it's kind of like, okay, a more direct follow up to Yoshi's Island sounds kind of appealing. And so I'd been looking forward to it, but the reviews were a bit mixed, and
Yep.
ultimately, what I felt about it was kind of similar. And so there was the odd thing that I felt like was better in terms of, like, I like the fact that you could basically, if you got Baby Mario or whichever baby you were carrying, because there were
Mm,
multiple in this version, if you got them back immediately, you didn't lose a point on your timer, which I kind of liked better than, the kind of, with the whole insistence on getting a maximum score.
yes.
I felt like that bit of leniency fit better with the whole tone of the game. To be honest, that if you just with Yoshi's tongue, like, just straight up in the air, snapping back in place straight away, no harm, no foul. I kind of like that better, but it's not a lot original in the game, and then the stuff that is original in the game is not great. So I kind of the dual screen stuff. I generally didn't really have a problem with games that played across the two screens. Like Metro Prime Pinball, or
Hmm.
this, where the screen gap. I think it kind of affected some people more than others. Where you have this kind of invisible zone because the angle's got to be correct.
Yep.
So you essentially have like a dead zone. It's awkward, admittedly, but I didn't have a big problem with that. But really, it's just like it doesn't look as nice as Super Nintendo Yoshi's Island, and it's kind of less creative and much less impactful. So you've still got what I personally think is fundamentally a pretty solid game, but it's just not really bringing much to the party. So I think it's probably between a 5 and a 6, but I'll go with a 5.
Okay. Um. Also, just a quick update from the Game Awards. Confirmed, Persona 4 Ultimax is coming to PS4, not PS5, Switch, and Steam.
Yeah, well, I guess, in terms of is it like, I think this week, the most recent week that they had hardware sales figures for in Japan, like the Switch models combined sold like 200,000,
Yes.
which is basically 20% of what the PS5 has sold in Japan to
Yeah.
date in one week
Exactly.
versus 1 year. But obviously, the supply constraints have a big part to play in that. But yeah, I guess there's not that much point in putting it on PS5
Yes.
when there's only a
Um.
million of them in Japan.
Yes. March 17th is the release date on that. Pre-orders now on Steam. It looks like. All right. Trauma Center Under the Knife.
Yeah, I remember hearing about these, and I think Johnny quite liked them, and he reviewed some of them uh, with on DS
Mm-hmm.
first, and then of course it came to Wii as well.
Yep.
I only played the actual what was it bloody well called now? 'Cause it was like Hospital 8 in one. Well, Trauma
Mm-hmm.
Team for Wii, which obviously sort of really expands things with different kind of more adventure game type stuff
Yes.
as well. So, but yeah, I think a 7 is probably
Okay.
appropriate for this.
Yeah.
Got a nice use of the stylus, and seemed like it was pretty good.
Sudoku Gridmaster.
Yeah, I mean, again, this kind of stuff was inevitable, wasn't it? After, alongside the brain game thing, once you open that avenue and it proves to be uh, lucrative, you're going to get more of this kind of stuff. And kind of Picross is yet to come, but this is pretty similar. So I didn't play it. I'm sure it's reasonable enough. But let's give it a 5.
Okay. Tenchu Dark Secret.
Dark Secret. That's a good one. That's Deadly Silence might be my preferred DS for Resident Evil, but is there any particular reason why they picked up Tenchu?
No, I don't know.
Because it's not like they were hard up for stuff to release.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, I don't know a lot about the Tenchu series, to be honest. There's one on Wii, I want to say, as well, but
Yep.
yeah, hard to say with this. I'll have to just have a quick look. Because as ninja games go, it's not like the sort of the most celebrated, I suppose.
Nope. Sure isn't.
Hmm. Yep. Sadly, it does not look like it was reviewed NWR for a start, so that's not very helpful.
Yeah.
Let's try something else. Okay, let's see what we got here. Oh, the GameSpot reviews are not very nice for 4.3 out of 10.
Yeah,
These are
that
pretty.
sounds right, and that's at a time when that's really hard to get.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Strange choice. Yeah, it's. I guess unlimited information. I think perhaps a 4 is going to have to be appropriate. Weird
All
end
right.
to the year.
Yeah, I mean, look, if it has DS in the subtitle, it's got to come over.
It's like, I think that was it. It's like bait. It's like, look, if you
Yes.
put DS in the subtitle, NOE will come to us and offer to pub.
Yes. All right, so that was still a higher year than 2005 or 2004. Um, Lowest game being Tenchu Dark Secret tied with Mario Party 7.
Yeah, well,
Um,
the alpha and omega of this particular year,
yes.
the way we've got it set up here.
A bunch of 8s, no 9s.
Not quite. No, this
Okay.
like Twilight Princess was probably a reasonable argument, but I'm not quite there.
Fair. All right, on to '07. Um, so here we are with 41 games.
The Wii bomb has gone off big time.
And the DS is all in.
Yeah, because even like some of this stuff was stuff that like presumably was '06 in other places, like
Yes.
WarioWare and Excite Truck and stuff. But yeah,
So just for reference on the order of how can you like in your head organize the year? The way that I organized this list is everything is in January to December release order in Europe, followed by the games that NOE brought over that are not theirs.
yeah.
And then that repeats per platform. So at the very beginning of the year, WarioWare Smooth Moves.
Yeah, so I didn't own this, but I did get to play it a bit. Probably not the best like WarioWare game, just like in terms of the design or like how well all the sort of gimmicks work. So yeah, Twisted we talked about before. It still has that, but it's a little bit of a hybrid in terms of you've got it is it's sort of separate game, unlike the GameCube WarioWare sort of like multiplayer like party edition
Yes.
but it is trying to have some of that same fun in terms of like all these sorts of like modes of holding the remote, like have it like the trunk of an elephant or whatever. It's mostly just to amuse other people by
Yes.
looking like an idiot. So it's definitely got some of that going on, but there's still a lot of the good WarioWare fundamentals at work here. So a 7, I think, is appropriate.
Okay. Excite Truck taking a little bit longer to come to Europe because who cares about trucking in Europe?
Yeah, well, certainly racing is we're so bloody enthusiastic about racing games of various
Yeah.
sorts. I mean, whether they're like the kart racing silly kind or the sort of simulation kind, or extreme race, anything. It seems like just across the board, it's a bigger deal in this region. But they were a little bit slow with this. I liked it. Obviously, it was kind of thin, but fundamentally the sort of wackiness and just the fact that it was a racing game that judged you on different criteria than normal, just driving, doing stupid things basically you get rewarded for, I thought was cool. So I think a 7. It's good, but a bit undercooked because it was a launch game.
Fair. Mario Strikers Charged Football.
Interesting case this. Obviously, we've already covered the original Mario Strikers at this point, which was kind of You're pretty good, but a bit late on the GameCube to make too much noise. Obviously, a lot of people kind of checked out at that point. So here, it's kind of, I think it was quite a lull in releases for Wii. So he had those ones early in the year, and then this was like it for until like sort of deeper into the summer. And so kind of having enjoyed the first one and just the fact that it was like something to get for Wii at the time, it's like I got it quite enthusiastically. And in terms of how it builds on the first one, there's good and bad with it. In terms of, it's definitely better in terms of like there's more distinct characters, you've got more options for kind of mixing and matching the players on your team for what you want, and the sort of captains, the main characters that lead the team, like Mario, Luigi, DK, etc. Have got more kind of I think differentiating sort of abilities in it as well. They also added like a sort of super charge goal thing, whereas like if you manage to buy yourself enough time to do a ridiculously long charge up, then you can just like enter this mode where you shoot like multiple balls at the goal at once, and then like the opposing player has got to save them using the pointer. Like a bunch of goals just fly at the screen. They've essentially got to like shoot them down with their gloves. So it's kind of interesting, at least the use of it, but kind of a bit gimmicky. But then the real thing is it added online multiplayer. So here
Yes.
we have online multiplayer, and it could be great. Playing online multiplayer against people in this, especially with you had a friend locally, and it's like 2v2, like that was really quite fun. But it was quickly, bit like the snaking thing we talked about with the Mario Kart DS, but more so, it turned sour. In that, basically, again, problem with this is this age of Nintendo Online is there was no real proper infrastructure for patching and balancing the
Not at
games.
all.
So what do we get? We get people abusing like certain character abilities that were kind of overpowered. That wasn't a big deal if you just play local, because it's like, okay, well, you can almost just agree amongst yourselves you're not gonna overuse stuff, because let's actually have some fun. But even in something that has no particular like ranking or tracking or anything like that, online people are just like, I want to win. I don't care if I'm making myself miserable in the process. I want to fucking win. So
Yes.
you just get constant abuse of some of these abilities. It's just like, this is miserable. And of course, eventually those people just drive out everybody else from who's online, and that was pretty much all that was waiting for you. So it just, yeah, it could be really fun, but sadly, it wasn't. You couldn't actually get that much fun out of it as often as you kind of should have done because of the limitations of the time. So the overall a 7, but yeah, there's a lot wrapped up in that.
Okay. Mario Party 8. This one has Waggle.
Yeah, I guess it had to. I mean, it's got to be better as a gimmick than the bloody microphone. I can only assume.
Uh,
No.
eh. I mean, it works better than the microphone, but the microphone, at least, I don't know, was novel for the platform.
Mm, yeah, well, it's again, I didn't play it. The only thing I remember about this when it came out is I think there was a little bit of a, a bit of controversy, or it's not necessarily the correct word, but there was a bit of a problem because I think it kind of carried over the use of the word spastic from the
Yeah,
American
no,
localization.
it got super recalled in Europe.
Yeah, the problem is that word has different connotations in Britain than it
I
does in the US,
I
and
mean, in the U.S., it's getting more like it is in Britain.
yeah, it was as someone who was a child in the 90s, so years before this, I can confirm it was very readily bandied about as a slur. It just that's how
Yes.
I knew it. It was a slur, and it was so bandied about as a slur that a charity that had the Spastic Society had to change its name because it was the slur it becomes so widespread
Yes.
that it was untenable to keep that in the name. So that's how bad it was. And of course, this just slips through the net, and they did have to recall it and stuff. So sadly, that is all I know of this game, which is a shame, I'm sure, because there's far more redeeming qualities to it than that. But I think it's tough, but I think just based on the fact that I'm sure even if it was a bit wonky, gesture control brought something more than microphone. I'm going to go with up to a 5.
Okay. The very amazingly titled Big Brain Academy for Wii.
Yeah. Yeah, well,
In the US, it was Wii Degree.
a Wii Degree. Yeah.
I don't know why it's just called For Wii in Europe.
Yeah, well, it's similar, was it, with Kirby's Adventure? Sorry, Kirby's Return to Dreamland. Was
Yes,
just called
Kirby.
Kirby's Adventure Wii or for Wii or So
it was not For Wii, it was just Wii.
Yeah, just Wii. But yeah, they certainly, as well as the kind of long literal titles, from Japanese titles, there was also just a more utilitarian, and this was one of the. Again, I assume this was pretty solid, based on everything I remember about it. So I think a 7 for this as well.
Okay. So Super Paper Mario, similar situation to Mario Party 8. Where this game takes 5 months to come out in Europe after it comes out. It debuts in North America, then comes to Japan like 10 days later.
Yeah.
5 months later in Europe, and then they do an optional recall because there's a game-breaking bug in the European version, but only the European version.
Wow, that's bad.
So if you talk to a character before you pick up an item, the game crashes and soft locks.
Well, yeah, I didn't play it until I did play it. It was one of the last times I ever rented a physical game. And of course, I hadn't been renting console games for so many years because a lot of the time my console didn't accept them. I mean, I did have a converter with Super Nintendo. We talked about renting a few games then, but basically went years without renting. And then when I got my Wii and they fixed the whole, there was no real PAL issue anymore, it was like, okay, I can rent games again. And so I did have a few, and I think this was probably the last of them. And so it was a while after the game had come out, so I don't know whether that issue had kind of come and gone, and then even longer after it had come out, obviously. But it's obviously this game, kind of started as a GameCube game, had loads of hype on early RFNs with Evan and Mike talking about it and stuff. So I was always interested in it, and even though the reviews weren't that warm, they weren't as warm as Thousand Year Door was, for instance. So it's a different kind of game.
Yeah, very different type of game.
Yeah, so it was kind of like, I'm not gonna run out and buy it, but I'm interested enough to play this one day, and so I did, and I quite liked it. But it's is a sort of more in the kind of Paper Mario going to be in a sort of adventure-ish kind of game, but also in this case, it's got the heavy kind of side-scrolling kind of emphasis to it, but then the whole gimmick is you rotate and the perspective, and it becomes three-dimensional kind of thing. So it's got cute ideas. It's got a pretty good soundtrack. I think that the story has some kind of merits to it. It was a little bit before we got to the point where the characters were clamped down in Paper Mario games, where
Yes,
the Toads.
This is the last game to have original characters like all over.
Yeah, we had not yet entered the era of the tyranny of the Toad, so I quite liked it, but I think probably a 7 again, not quite enough to go higher.
Okay, Metroid Prime 3 Corruption.
Well, yeah, this was very, very long awaited by me in terms of, kind of, because I really, really liked the idea of the Wii Remote for this kind of game. I thought, what this
Mm-hmm.
is where it could really do it some good, and it did. I mean, like especially kind of, I guess because of it, it led them down a more kind of action shooter oriented path, and it made that part of the game way better. Some of the other stuff, I wasn't so fond of. However convoluted Metroid Prime 2 might have been, I liked the feeling of kind of being able to get lost and this kind of hostile world. Everything was a bit more parceled out and kind of safer in this, and, with the separate worlds, compared to the one interconnected one, for instance. So I very much enjoyed it, and it did deliver on a lot of the promise that it had. But I think still an 8 for this.
Okay. Well, so far the highest of the year.
Yep.
Soon to be overtaken by Endless Ocean.
I had Endless Ocean. I did like it quite a lot. It's I hadn't played Pokemon Snap yet, but I guess it was, it's kind of similar.
Very similar, yeah.
Um, yeah, but with the realistic underwater kind of, obviously we couldn't do this kind of experience as much justice as other hardware on the market at the time, because it is kind of important, I think, to this sort of experience to have like the as much fidelity as you can, and it couldn't obviously do as well as like PS3 or whatever, but what it did well with what it had to work with, and it was a nice kind of relaxing experience from what I could recall. So I think a 7 for this as well.
Okay. Super Mario Galaxy.
Yeah, well, this was the big one on Wii this year for me. I was just really, really looking forward to it. It looked so promising, when it had been shown other times in the past, the previous E3 and previews and everything. And it didn't disappoint. I absolutely loved it, especially when the music, because in the earlier trailers, like the music was just synth, and then before release it's like, oh, it's got an orchestra now, and that definitely added to it. Just a great kind of moving 3D Mario, much more in the direction that I wanted to see it going, and based on those parts of Sunshine that I liked, and really really effective. So a 9.
Sounds good. Um, Quick update on Game Awards. It looks like Quantic Dream is allowed on stage. I don't know if that's a good idea after all of the lawsuits, but they're announcing a Star Wars game that the Walt Disney Company is partnering with Quantic fucking Dream. I hate it. I know this was rumored, but I hate this world. Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games.
Yeah, well, I guess it was a weird one back when Sega announced this, Sega, Nintendo, that this was happening, and they were partnering, and they were going to sell all these units and stuff. But it happened. They weren't wrong. They did sell pretty well, but I guess I've never played any of them for much time, other than I think a DS game that I had to review at one point. But it is, but the console ones I've not played, and I guess it's just like track and field, but for the 21st century, basically, these sort of various events that are kind of pretty simplistic. A lot of kind of button mashy type things, if it's not necessarily that input mechanism. So yeah, I think a 6.
Okay, Pokemon Battle Revolution, which literally is just a battle visualizer.
Yeah, not a lot to commend for this, I guess, even though this is, you know, in time for the European release of Diamond and Pearl, right? That's basically what it's coinciding with here. But
Yes.
it's kind of, I guess, it's nice to see a Pokemon in 3D or whatever. But other than that, there's I 4 for this one.
Okay. Link's crossbow training.
I did have this eventually. I didn't pay full price for it. I think I just got the disc on eBay because I didn't want the plastic
Mm-hmm.
shell. It just takes up space and accomplishes very little for nothing. It's kind of amusing, like shooting gallery just based on in the Twilight Princess world, which I like a lot. And the music and stuff like it. So I didn't have any complaints. It was what I thought it was going to be, but obviously what it is pretty thin. So a 5.
Okay. Korarimpa Marble Mania.
Yeah, so I remember hearing about these games a little bit in terms of kind of making sense with is this sort of is this a bit like a kind of monkey ballish or something, in terms of like things roll, you kind of
Yes,
use the remote and things roll. Also, was it Mercury Meltdown Revolution, or was another game that was in this sort of
I
vein
think so.
around this sort
Yes.
of time? Yeah, but I never did actually play it, so don't know how legit it was. Well, let's just have a quick consult. But I think it was okay. Like, basically that's how I remember it. Anyway, it's kind of that
Yeah.
concept was. So let's go with a 6.
Okay. Wing Island.
Yeah, so I guess it's just like, well, people, there's some like hope for this based on, so it's like people that wanted a pilot wings, but they weren't going to get one. Uh,
Yeah, well.
So, but I don't think it particularly ended up being any good. That's my recollection of it anyway. I feel like it just didn't. If it was shown relatively early to be coming in 2007, but it didn't. When it did arrive, it didn't exactly bowl anyone over with the quality of how long it had been in production or anything. So, a full.
Okay. Pangya. Golf with Style.
Yeah, so I mostly just sort of have some remembering of this to do with it being some sort of meme with Carl and Stan on early RFN. Sadly, the actual substance of the game I don't know a
Um,
great deal about.
alright, so the English name is Super Swing Golf Pangya.
Yes.
Um, and let me check. It has a 72 on Metacritic. It is Tecmo.
Oh, this is it. Yeah, Stan hated it. This is
Yeah, it's a 3.5 from
yeah,
Stan.
Stan hated it, and he could give sports games a decent review, but he wasn't going to in this case. So yeah, that's why it was a meme
Yes.
back then. Uh,
Pros. It's the only anime golf simulation on the Wii so far. Cons. I could go on and on. One playable character out of the box. Terrible controls. Unable to create a character.
yeah, it's the whole to me. Like I said, I mean, Wii Sports Golf worked okay, but it did the promise of motion control golf. Wouldn't that be cool? Motion Plus is where you actually got to that being
Oh,
somewhat
yes.
realized, really. So I think 5.
Okay.
You can see there were people that liked it better than Stan, so I won't go as low as that.
Yes.
But yeah, I won't go higher
Alright.
than either.
Back to the Game Boy Advance.
Yay!
Final Fantasy V Advance. Also, Final Fantasy VI Advance.
Yeah, let's just get this over with. Yeah, because they were on a lag compared to
Yeah,
the
this
US,
is
I
it.
guess, but they're just like, look, let's just stick a fork in this thing, get it over with, but not drag it into 2008. Yeah, I mean, 5. I've talked about before. I would really like to play it. I have not. It sounds really cool. 5 Advance, of course, was big because 5 did not come out on Super Nintendo in any form. So, any thoughts on the merits of the version, though?
People
Relative
like
to others?
these. People like 5 and 6 Advance. I did not get around to playing these versions because, I don't know, 2006 and 2007? I was kind of on to other things, if I'm being honest.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I think. Yeah, with 6 Advance, it's a little bit different from 4 Advance in terms of its relationship to the Super Nintendo version, because the Super Nintendo version, the Final Fantasy 3, as it was called, was not as wonky as Final Fantasy 2. So I guess there was less improvements to be made there, but also maybe more downsides to the presentation being on GBA. So I think we'll give both of them an 8. Having not played, they were not quite comfortable enough to go above that. Even though I played the Super Nintendo version of 3/6, and it's obviously it's a very good game and it's very well liked. So there's probably an argument for going higher, but I'll go with 8.
I'm sorry, I just got a fucking tweet from at Nintendo_NWR. Maybe you've heard of them. Bad. That says bad news for Whooper fans. Open parentheses. Hi at Seren. Close parentheses. Pokemon Legends Arceus' latest Hisuian form is not a fan of Whoopers. What?
Oh.
What is that headline? Who is bullying me?
I'm not. Well, I'm sure there's lots of people that like Whoopers. I mean, I like Whoopers.
Yeah. No, I'm just getting bullied on Maine from NWR.
Also, I've not been in this arena. Who actually does this for NWR? Who actually gets whose finger is on the
Donald
nuclear button? Okay.
Yes, this is they're talking about Voltorb.
It's on the front. I'm on the front page. Yeah, also
yes.
known as "Screw Your Water" types.
Yes. It is an electric grass type. So.
All the pain.
All the pain, but specifically Whooper used to be immune from electric because it was part ground type, but now not anymore. So that's why.
Oh.
All right. On to DS Action Loop.
Yeah, so I remember this. This has a different name somewhere, doesn't it?
Magnetica.
Yeah, so not too familiar with it in terms of. I think it had some decent kind of reception at the time, but the reasonable sort of fit with. It's also is there something called Puzzle Loop at some point as well? So I don't remember if that was a separate thing or what that was, but yeah, let's have a quick look. Check in with Magnetica.
I mean, it's a puzzle game where you are in the middle and there's marbles around you and you shoot marbles to clear marbles in the line as they try and snake towards the exit.
Yeah, I think a 6 for this one. Seems like it was pretty solid portable puzzler, but and I think it comes back later on
WiiWare.
Yep. Yeah.
As Action Loop Twist or Magnetica Twist.
Yeah. The legacy of splitting the names
yes.
to continue to pay dividends.
Star Fox Command.
Yeah, I talked about this on RFN not that long ago with the anniversary of the NWR video on it and all that. It's a game that is more interesting than it is good, I think. And not to say that it isn't good at all, because I do quite like it, but it is really interesting and sort of, but not quite as much fun as that. And it has this online multiplayer mode, which I do remember playing and having a little bit of fun with, but it wasn't that populated, and that was the problem. I guess is that it was mostly it didn't sell that well, and probably people who had it was probably too busy playing Mario Kart or something.
Yes.
Else, so it just seemed like an odd choice of resources to spend in there. And of course, it had all these bloody silly branching story paths and all this kind of stuff. But overall, I've torn between a 6 and a 7 on this. I think I'll go with a 7.
Okay.
It's maybe a little bit generous, but I do like it, and I do like the fact that it was trying to do some different stuff that was just somewhat successful. It just could have used with a bit more traditional Star Fox to go with it.
Magical Star Sign.
Okay, so let's look this up. I am not familiar with this, am I? Unless it's a different name that I'm familiar with it under, because as we've established, we are so much. Is this Disney? Is
no.
So what the bloody hell is it then?
I'm waiting.
Yeah, sorry.
No,
Disappointed
no,
there.
I'm enjoying this. Because I know what's gonna happen.
Okay. Yes. So here we go. Is Carl reviewing it as an RPG back then? So it's a strange choice, isn't it? Well, it says I was, putting my faith in Carl here, which is you can be perilous at times if you
Mm-hmm.
wanted Battalion Wars 2 reviewed for its, but I'll give it on his description of it being utterly forgettable, which is seemingly consistent with the fact. I will go with a 5.
Okay. Mario Slam Basketball.
So this is hoops. It's hoops 3-on-3, right? In the US, and it's slam. But it's sort of quite
Mario Hoops
descriptive.
3-on-3 in the West.
Yeah, it's quite descriptive, isn't it? It's like like dog bites man. Mario
Yes.
slam basketball. Uh, yeah, it's Square. You're doing this. Not for the last time either.
No.
They will get more Square doing Mario Sports eventually. There's like a Moogle in it or something, isn't there? Like as
Yep,
well.
and like a white mage and a black mage.
The promo art always looked quite cool compared to a bit like Mario Strikers as well. Like with the promo art for other get where they just get away from just doing the pre-rendered thing, it always made it just if they it looked more appealing because it always does to me. But obviously, it was using the touchscreen to kind of I think for like passing and all. So I don't know whether it was necessarily the most rock solid mechanics and all that, but I think it was pretty decent. So a 6.
Okay. Mario vs. Donkey Kong 2 March of the Minis. And I am going to put a note here that says this is the third Mario vs. Donkey Kong game because we're going to count 94. And really, by the end of this, I just want to have a running count. So I've done this a few times, and I know this gets fucking stupid really fast. How many Mario vs. Donkey Kong releases there are? Because there are way too many.
Yeah, and this is really the genesis of it because Mario vs. Donkey Kong, as you said, is very much like DK94. This
Yes.
is where we get a significant break from that. Oh, there's still a fair bit of overlap, of course, but this is where basically we get the Lemmings inspired kind of
100%.
paradigm comes into things, and that is for what at one point I was thinking like maybe on a different system that isn't so much like about the touchscreen and like indirectly kind of
Uh.
like DK94,
Mhm.
but this was it. This was the formula basically from here on in. I did eventually play it because the reviews kind of made me think, it doesn't sound as appealing to me as the original Mario versus Donkey Kong, which I'd also played late. So it was kind of like I just played that one and I liked it. This one I might not like as much, so it can wait. And it did, and until I got it for a very low price. And it's pretty good at what it's trying to do, and it's a kind of pretty good use of dual screen, touch screen, and all that. But it is just it's more fiddly, it's more convoluted, and less immediate than the original kind of formula was. So I think it's kind of good in its own right, but just not as much to my taste as that original formula. So I'd go. It's probably so maybe 6.5. I'll go with the 7 on this one. The fact that it will subsequently get regurgitated so many times, the score is going to go down
Yes.
probably.
Um. Game Awards update. I think they're debuting the trailer for Sonic the Hedgehog 2, the movie.
Oh, the films on it. Yeah,
Yes. And I'm just. Twitter's not. No one's really tweeting about this right now. I'm kind of idly curious. Are they going to have Idris Elba as Knuckles in the trailer?
oh, Idris. Yeah.
Yeah, because that's the number one. Wait, what the fuck are you doing?
He's got a great voice. I
He
mean, you can't
does.
argue with that. I don't know whether it's a great
Um.
Knuckles voice, but
Yes.
I haven't seen the first film either. I don't know how that's going to go at all.
It's fine. It's whatever. Also, they announced Alan Wake 2.
Okay.
Um, all right. if you got a new DS after playing Pokemon Dash and you're like, God fucking damn it, they got me once, but never again will I scribble my DS screen to death on a Pokemon game, and Nintendo customer service is thinking, finally, Pokemon Dash is out of print. We'll never go through this again. Might I introduce Pokemon Ranger, a game about scribbling circles as fast as you can on the touchscreen.
A start of a series.
Oh, yep.
There were multiple of these. I actually had to
Uh-huh.
review the sequel, I believe, for NWR, and what I had the luxury of at that time is I had upgraded to my DS Lite. Because I didn't
Mm-hmm.
upgrade that fast. It took me a while, but I upgraded to the DS Lite, and so what I did was play the review copy on my old DS.
Valid.
That was a luxury worth having in that case. I didn't mind it. I kind of felt like there was some kind of at least the sequel anyway. I don't know how much it improved on it. It was probably slight, because they were quite close together, as often is the case with Pokemon. It's just keeping pace with everything else that's happening with the series. But it was the fundamentals of it were quite decent, I felt, and the way it used the characters and stuff, other than just this is somewhat problematic, leveraging that kind of abuse of the
Yes.
touchscreen is not great. So I think I gave the sequel a 6 back in the day. I think I'll give this a 5.
Okay. Hotel Dusk, room 215.
Yeah, I didn't play this at the time. There was a fair amount of intrigue. I kind of I ended up kind of paralyzing myself because there was all these different kind of adventure inflected kind of DS games, Ace Attorney and Trace Memory, or another code depending on where you
Yep.
were, and this, and I just like, which one is the right one for me? And I guess to an extent I ended up satisfied that by going with Layton, but Layton is obviously, the whole logic puzzle stuff and emphasis. It's not quite the same thing, is it? I mean, it's you get in some of that appeal, but not all of it.
Yeah.
So I didn't play this. I can't speak for. It seems like it's one of the more kind of well liked games from Sing in this
Yeah.
time period.
It
But
is.
yeah. So any advisory beyond that?
Mm, I mean, it's just a well liked mystery adventure game on your DS, and it uses the DS in book format.
Yes, book mode. The Brain Age did that
Yes.
too. I
But
forgot
like
about
that's
Brain
an
Age doing that
it's
too.
a good way to handle, you've got an adventure game that's like trying to be novel style. It makes sense.
Yeah, I think we'll go with the 7 on that as well.
Okay. Um Update, apparently Idris is in the trailer as Knuckles, so I will have to watch that later. I would put it on the stream and watch it now, except I would get taken down if they put music on that trailer because they sure put Gangster's Paradise on that first trailer for that first movie, so I don't trust them. Um, Diddy Kong Racing DS,
big
starring
fans, big
Banjo.
big fans of the Dangerous Minds starring Michelle Pfeiffer, were they?
Oh yes,
I'm sure that's why it was in there. DK Race, yeah. I mean, I like the original. I think the port was mostly okay. I don't know whether there
yes,
was something weird with blowing into the microphone with this.
yes.
I have to track this down now with the propeller or something.
Yeah, that sounds fucking
Oh
right.
god. Yeah, that was. I mean, look, everyone was at it at the time. Uh, Nintendo and all sorts of other people, but yeah, I think probably a 6.5, but I'm gonna go with a 6 on that
Okay,
one.
Picross DS.
Yeah, my introduction to Picross. I've played quite a lot of other Picross things since, but this
Yes.
was my introduction, and so yeah, maybe I might think a little bit more warmly of it than it necessarily deserves. Yeah, but I mean, it's a good fit for the hardware. It had some of that kind of daily play thing that was very popular in like some of the Touch Generations games, to try and get people to kind of keep coming back to it rather than just forgetting about stuff. And kind of foreshadows where we'd go with mobile stuff eventually. The whole like get people to check in with something regularly, or exhaust what they can do for free, before they can have anything else. But I'll give it a 7.
Okay. Custom Robo Arena.
Yeah, so I guess this is like, this is the first time that Custom Robo got out of Japan, because you had the N64 game, you had a GameCube game. They seemed pretty good, sort of interesting games, but I never did get around to any of them. And then when this did come out elsewhere, I didn't get it either. So yeah,
Yeah, you and everyone else.
yeah, it's kind of sad, really. But yeah, I wouldn't have minded giving it a chance. But it, I think it, was pretty well thought of, much like its predecessors for the most part. So perhaps another 7.
Okay. This one probably won't be getting a 7. Wario Master of Disguise.
Yeah, I was really disappointed by the reviews on this one. I'd been hoping, that this might be pretty good, although obviously did know ahead of time that it was getting outsourced to Suzak, I think it was.
Yes, but like...
They also made like one of their GBA F Zeros, or at least contributed to it or something. So I mean, I don't know whether it necessarily was like, I mean, you knew it wasn't
proper.
It wasn't ideal in the sense
Yes.
like, oh, it's the same people who made the first 4 games making it, but wouldn't necessarily think it. Oh well, it's bound to be terrible. But by the sound of it, it was just gimmicky and not at all really. I mean, they didn't put it as a Wario Land game. Was it Wario the Thief in Japan? I believe is how.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, so I think this is a 4.
This just was even more disappointing based on where, to me, based on where the DS was. Because, like, especially in the US, like, okay, it comes out in 2004, and you get, like, your Mario 64 DS, haha, like, we're starting things off. 2005, you get your Yoshi Touch and Go, and, like, you start getting, like, your Kirby Power Paintbrush, and, like, alright, weird things you can do with touchscreen on the system.
Yep.
And then, like, 2006, like, the last year, that's where you get, like, more 2D platformers, like Yoshi's Island DS, and New Super Mario Bros., and Super Princess Peach. And whether or not those games are good aside, 2007, it's like, alright, here's Wario. Why does he feel like a 2005 game?
Yeah, it feels like it's gone backwards in time, and I think it's way more gimmicky and than than like the Kirby Canvas Curse or whatever it was called over here.
Yes.
It's a bit like what they went on to do with, funnily enough, it's presumably a much better game. I like it, so I hope it's the Wonderful 101. Like, this kind of like, the way that's like, oh, you draw like so, and it makes a fist or it makes a sword, or it's a bit like that, but like just with these 7 different Wario sort of costumes, essentially, hence the Master of Disguise thing. But just all the platforming fundamentals, by the sound of it, were out of whack too. So it's just, it is. I don't know whether it was in development, like kind of purgatory or whatever, for a while, and it was something that may have at one time been intended to come sooner, because it sure as hell feels like that was the case.
Mm-hmm. Metroid Prime Pinball.
Yeah, I got this, and I liked it a lot. I like pinball in general, and this was, again, there's a little bit of an issue with the kind of dead zone, the space with the pinball, but at least when it's fixed position, like a pinball table, you kind of, it's more problematic in Yoshi's Island DS than it is here. That's for sure, because the pinball table is just, it is where it is. And, that it gives you more of a, like I said, so often, even with pretty good video game representations of pinball, before this, certainly on portable hardware, it's very cramped, so you've got a lot of scrolling and stuff, which kind of just messes up getting knowing the shots down and stuff. You didn't have any of that with this because of the dual screens and certainly higher resolution than previous Nintendo portables. And all this kind of very faithful Metroid Prime aesthetics and the soundtrack and working in all the different like it's more enjoyable doing the artifact hunt arguably in pinball form than
Yes.
it is in the original Metroid Prime. And like you've got boss tables with like the Omega Pirate and the Metroid Prime itself and all this. I played it a shitload. I really, really liked it. Even had some like kind of crappy, but like some online leaderboards were present, which is better than nothing.
It is true.
So yeah, I would have to go with an 8 on this one. But I also have to say, this is late, right? Like
Yeah.
it was earlier than this because I imported it.
Yes. This is definitely late. Um, Kirby Mouse Attack.
Yeah, so obviously I played Kirby Canvas Curse. I liked it, so I wouldn't have been opposed at all to kind of try in a more conventional Kirby game. But everything that I read at the time suggested that this was not the one
Oh
to do.
no, Squeak Squad, as it's called in the
Yeah,
U.S.
it just
No.
kind of become like a term of derision, isn't it? I mean, almost, isn't it? Like if somebody wants to point to like a dodgy Kirby game, it's like Squeak Squad is pretty much it. It's sort of synonymous with that. So, and again, this
Unfortunately.
wasn't this more like was this farmed out as well, or was this?
Who made Kirby Squeak Squad? Um, Kirby Squeak Squad was HAL and Flagship.
Flagship, of course, yeah, because Flagship were involved with Amazing Mirror, weren't they? Yeah,
Yes.
so it just well, yeah, not a lot of excuses here, but I think
No.
again I've not played it. I guess could go and look at it on the Wii U Virtual Console because I'm pretty sure that is there. Whereas some of the other like Princess Peach is not.
Yeah.
But a 5, I think,
Okay.
for this.
Um, More brain training from Dr. Kawashima. How old is your brain? Is the funniest way to handle Brain Age 2.
Yeah, I would love it if there was like a trilogy and it was further brain training or something.
Somehow, yet more.
Somehow Dr. Kawashima returned. Is that where we're
Oh,
going with this?
Jesus, no. That's not what I was going, but yes.
Yeah, not so consequential considering this is just like cashing in on it. So I think we're going down from a 7 to a 5 on this.
Okay. Um, Planet Puzzle League.
Yeah, I had this, obviously stripped of. We'd already done it on GBA because that Dr. Mario double pack
Yes.
that we talked about, but stripped of any kind of licensing or even just the paneled upon, kind of original look and characters and stuff. It's just going for pretty conventional, colourful, portable puzzler look, and again, I do really like that puzzle format and the touch controls and the book the sort of mode of holding it and all that. It was all pretty well suited, so I'd go with an 8 on that one.
Okay. Elite Beat Agents.
Yeah, I had this. Oh yeah, I heard a lot about a Wendan, but I didn't get round to importing it. I ended up with a Wendan 2. But that was actually because a friend imported it and gave it to me very generously. So I have played an Wendan, but I played this first, EBA, and yeah, really, really liked it. After all the kind of talk about how like cool Owendan was, I wasn't sure if it would live up to it, but I knew I could enjoy rhythm type stuff. You have absolutely adored Rhythm Tengoku when I imported that. So it was it had a certain amount of hype to live up to, and some of the songs, like the Western songs that it's like covering, are just kind of overdone. You've just heard them enough times in your life already.
Yes.
And not in sound alike form either, but
Uh-huh.
some of them do work really well. with the kind of scenarios that they devise. I mean, like the jump and jack flash finale thing is like
Mm-hmm.
it works. It does really work. So I'd give it an 8.
Okay. Pokemon Diamond and Pokemon Pearl.
Yeah, as we've discussed previously, my first full-on entry into the Pokemon series.
Yep.
Really, really enjoyed them. Hard for me to kind of contextualize how well they kind of iterated on, the sort of final GBA versions, having not played those. But yeah, it's and I mentioned this on RFN just last week. I probably would go with the remakes over these of Gold and Silver for my favorite of
Mm-hmm.
the DS Pokemon games, but it was still really good. I was a Chimchar person
Mm-hmm.
with an Infernape, and yeah, it was Pearl, Palkia, all that stuff. The trading with
Yep.
online was cool. The friend who had Diamond, and we did plenty of battling and stuff. Even had voice chat. Remember that?
Yes, it sure did somehow. In the
So
underground? Yeah.
I think I could almost go to a 9 on this, but I'm gonna stick with 8.
Okay. Um, Freshly picked Tingle's Rosy Rupee Land.
Yeah, so I assume that's a pretty literal like translation of
Almost
Tingle.
assuredly. Tell me
Yeah,
about this game, Greg.
I can only tell you so much. I didn't end up playing it. As much as amusing as it sounds in theory and stuff, it's also it's very sort of Wario kind of concept.
Yes.
If you made a Wario RPG, it would probably have a lot of these. It's all about money, and you barter over everything, and you kind of hire people to do stuff and all this. So it's sort of like just sort of applying some Wario tropes to Zelda. It sounds kind of funny, but also not necessarily the most, uh, you know, precisely constructed game.
No,
So,
it's a
I,
comedy thing, so yeah.
yeah, I think I'd lean a 6 on this. But if I played it, I might be willing to go higher, but I think it's the non-committal 6.
Yeah. Donkey Kong Jungle Climber.
Yeah, so I played this. It's pretty good. I quite like it. I don't necessarily love the pre-renders aesthetics. They're probably a weirder fit even for this kind of viewpoint than they are for the DKC typical side scroller
Agreed.
viewpoint. But it doesn't particularly affect the gameplay. I'm sure. I have not played the first one as we already covered, but I think a 6 is fair for this.
Okay. The Legend of Zelda Phantom Hourglass.
Yeah, of course, had this. It was a big deal. Another portable Zelda, and the kind of Wind Waker aesthetic coming back, and how they're using the touchscreen and all that. I was mostly a fan of how they adapted the kind of control scheme and everything. I think it's is it everything you'd ever want Zelda to be forever? No, but adapting it to DS and giving you a different way of interacting with things, and some of the stuff they did with the items I think was cool. It's the biggest problem I had with it, probably a lot of people had, was just the way it kind of felt like it was trying to stretch out the content it had
Yes.
by doing the revisits of the central kind of temple and
Mm-hmm.
stuff. I mean, it's not entirely without progression in terms of there's some value in like, okay, well, now I can cut out some steps and do things more efficiently, and so it's not like absolutely just entirely duplicative, but there's still a lot. There is duplication.
Oh,
And
yes.
it's very difficult to escape in that feeling. It's just like it's just to prolong the game. So I think 7 is appropriate here. I
Okay.
can't. I really just can't see myself going lower or higher. So
That's fair. Practice English. It's a
So
command.
we've gone from English training to practice English.
Yes, we've gone from English training, have fun improving your skills, to practice English.
Well, I guess it is more succinct, so we can say that much. But I'll try and be succinct and just give it a 5.
Okay. Sight training, enjoy exercising and relaxing your eyes. Which, of course, comes over here as flash focus.
Flash focus, yeah, no, alliterative, snappy title rather than that. Although I kind of feel like this like over wordy title is more suitable for the sort of flim flam that is peddling. I mean,
Yes.
I mean, it's like relaxing and exercising. Like, isn't that like it's so we have certain parts of the game that you dart in your eyes suddenly, but then other parts of the game where you're just letting them rest. I mean, it's like I
Yes.
do remember. I feel like Johnny got to play this in some form or whatever and talked about it a bit once. But it's firmly in the realm of this like just like peddling something as productivity software when it's not. So I think, but it didn't have any of the sort of impact or importance of brain training the first time round. So brain age. So I will go with a 4.
Okay. Mario Party DS.
Yeah, I don't remember this again. We're back here again. We're going to keep being back here, for goodness knows
Yes,
anymore.
we
But
sure are.
but
So,
I don't
earlier in the
remember.
year, you gave Mario Party 5 a 5.
Yeah.
Or Mario Party 8 a
So
5, excuse me.
yeah, the Wii one, the first Wii one. This one, I don't remember it being particularly well thought, but then portable Mario Parties generally weren't, were they? Like Mario Party Advance, I mean, they usually didn't get that great a reception because this is not that natural compared to, it's very much a console, gather around the same TV type of game, isn't it?
Um, yeah,
So
no, this is this is a local multiplayer or single player. And by local multiplayer, I mean it does have download play, but it requires all the different DSs.
yeah, so I mean, the download play helps for this sort of thing, definitely. When your focus is on not just like one other person, but multiple other people to make it work. Uh, you know, Expecting that many people to have copies of the game was a bit much. So the fact that
Yes.
DS download play and the wireless communication, it was a big step up from where we were on GBA. The GBA had like some downloady play type of stuff. Like I remember, like with Mario Kart Super Circuit, I think you could race as like one character if you didn't have.
Yeah.
So they sort of experimented with it. This kind of light, slimmed down kind of modes back then, but DS allowed them to do it more robustly. So I think I'm going to stick with a 5.
Okay. Children of Mana.
Yeah, so don't know too much about this. So I mean, I don't think it's I guess not that many in the series are that warmly thought of beyond Secret of Mana, I guess. But
Yes.
hmm.
Some people like Trials of Mana or Seiken Densetsu 3.
Yeah, and the remake I think is of that is better thought of than the remake of Secret,
I
isn't
mean,
it?
yes, that's just because that dev team gets more experience. Though maybe having the tribal character in tribal getup be the Beast Man was not something that needed to get revisited in that remake. They sure did it anyway.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's tough to know again what to make of this exactly. It wasn't the most warmly received at the time, but I don't know whether that's any of the burden of the expectations that went along with that name, and kind of any of that sort of stuff. But I have to go with a 5, I think.
Okay. For what it's worth, when you type Children of Mana into Metacritic, it services the Children of Mana page as well as list of Adam Sandler movies.
Okay.
I think it's pulling children from one place and a potential misspelling of Mama's Boy from another.
Ah, right. Okay.
That's my guess as to how the hell that happens.
That is pretty well intuited. I think. I don't think. I mean, I'm not. I don't have a tremendous command
Neither do I. I don't.
of his filmography. But
Not at
I
all.
think it would have taken me a long time to get.
That's just my guess.
Sounds pretty good to me.
So, alright. 6.27 for the year. in for 2007. We're really hovering around the low, the 6.2, 6.3 range.
Yeah,
For this
it's
Wii
gonna be
era.
tough. It's tough to get that much higher when you've got this kind of volume, isn't it? And then, but of course, we've got
Oh wait,
bloody
has a chance maybe.
we've got DSiWare and
Oh yeah,
WiiWare to come and muddy the waters even more.
2009 is where it's gonna plunge. For sure because of volume. Like 2008 is 34 and 2009 is 70. And by the way, 2009 you are spared because so much of the DSiWare shit got sent over to 2010 in Europe.
Yeah, well,
So, yes,
deferring the
deferred.
pain.
But like, we're not going to do this right now because you have RFN to go do. But like, 2008 is going to be Mario Kart Wii, Wii Fit, Brawl, Wario Land, new Play Control Pikmin, two Trauma Center games, three art style games, and then no, DS is gonna tank it again. Never mind. Never mind.
Yeah,
Forget
it's
everything I said. I'm looking at what the hell we're gonna have to skip over, and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm sorry. Professor Kageyama's math training, the 100-cell calculation method, is not gonna do you any
maths.
favors.
Oh, maths training. Oh, I mean,
Which is separate than Make 10 a Journey of Numbers, also that year.
yeah, what's the one that's like the fucking math magician one or whatever?
Yeah, I think that's yeah. So okay, well, get ready. Next year to next stream tomorrow. Next week is gonna start with Wii Chess, the
Yes.
game that only came out on disc in Europe,
So weird.
and it was download. It was WiiWare in Japan, and it never came out in the North America.
So WiiWare. How is that? Like, if it came out in '06, I would have understood it. But like, WiiWare's about to happen.
Yeah,
Why is
the
that
game, the ISO for the game is 30 megabytes.
Yeah, well, of course it is bloody chess.
So and there's no fancy graphics, so they're like, why don't we just put this on our service where 40 megs is the cap?
This is truly, truly.
So yes, it's gonna be Wii Chess, the Mythical Battalion Wars 2, and Donkey Kong Jet Race. Just as a heads up for where '08 is gonna start.
Oh, that's it's another like Super Paper Mario, but that's like really super deferred. I'm surprised.
Yes.
And also, we get to talk about Disaster.
Yes, Disaster Day of Crisis and Wii Music and Animal Crossing Wii back to back to back.
You did because you wouldn't have got to do Disaster with Neil.
No, this is the first time it's coming up.
I hesitate to say it makes it all worth it, especially
But
with how long I'm taking to do this. But I mean, it does, doesn't it?
yes, and then for some reason a very deferred Zack and Wiki.
Yeah.
I guess I guess they just talked to Capcom. Capcom was never going to bring it out in Europe, so
Yeah.
it comes out the same year as New Play Control, which felt at the time pretty far fucking into the Wii generation.
Yeah, it's true that I'd already imported it. I'd played it, and I didn't even do that quickly. Like,
Yeah.
But by the time it just kind of it was cheaper, and I think I knew it was going to come out in Europe at that point, but it hadn't happened yet.
Yes.
It was just like, oh, I may as well get on with it. So that's I guess it's something. When you look back, that the NOE had done quite a lot over the years, like with just like the Capcom stuff, where it's just like, oh, you can't be bothered to bring it here, we'll do it for you.
Yep.
But they just hadn't done it in a while up to that point, had they? It
Yes.
was a little throw. Oh, there he is. There he is. DK having his soak.
Yep. Absolutely. All right. Thank you very much, and we're gonna call it for this stream, I think.
Yes.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.